My approach to stacking gold and silver has changed quite a lot over the last 5 years of this precious metal journey that I've been on, and it's very much evolving as we speak into 2021 and beyond as well. The world is going to be a bit of a chaotic place going forward. We all know that. We don't know what's going to happen with finances and the world at large. So it is important to constantly evaluate and reevaluate why we are all buying these wonderful precious metals in the first place. Hello everybody, Backyard Bullion here, and a very warm welcome to you all joining me for this week's Precious Metal Ramble. Now, over the last 5 or 6 years of stacking gold and silver, I have had a whole host of different changes of approach, strategies, tactics, and methodology by which I buy and sell silver and gold. And it is interesting to see how things evolve in the world and how one reacts to them and changes strategies and looks at different approaches, takes on the opinions and viewpoints of others out there. It's really important to hammer home this point that I have made so many times on this channel, which is not everybody's situation is the same, and everybody's individual situation needs to be evaluated by themselves. Now, this last 6 months of the year has really changed, again, one of the fundamental things that I hold about my gold and silver in my long-term stack, and that is that this stuff is going to be something I want to hold for an awful lot longer. We are in uncertain times. Everybody knows that, and you can see that we're in uncertain times because there is this rise in popularity towards precious metals that has grown out of the frustration with banking systems and finance world, and of course all of the measures that have been taken economically to try and get through the coronavirus pandemic, which needed to happen, had to happen. There's no doubt in my mind about that, but at what cost? And that is one of the things that has really worried me over the last 6 months. To be honest, it's worried me since last year, but over this last 6 months, I really have, looked at the way the world is and thought, what, the precious metals that I have, a lot of them could be sold at nice profits based on what I had at the start. But I do think there's a lot more room for growth. So exit strategies and ensuring that you have the means by which to release the funds that you've got in your silver and gold is key. It's something that I've constantly talked about here on the channel. And it's something that I think is important to reassess and evolve over time. Not everybody can have a YouTube channel, Instagram, social media accounts, high profile, social networks that they could look to rely on to sell silver. I'm very fortunate that over this last 5 years, I have built up this presence, this profile online on places like the Silver Forum and here on YouTube and Instagram and everywhere. If I put something out for sale, if I said to you guys right now, I'm putting this silver bar up for sale for spot price, I guarantee you within seconds of me announcing that, I will have emails coming through about it. It's very, very powerful to have that kind of thing. And I did never envisage that right at the start. When I bought my first pieces of silver, the plan was always going to be to sell it one of two places, on eBay or back on to dealers. And that has very, very much changed for me over time. Establishing a seller profile, great idea, good thing to do. And if you can do it, then fantastic. A lot of people are always very anti the idea of even potentially selling any silver and gold at all. But I did it, and I did it for a very clear purpose of building up a sales history. I quickly realized that having, for example, even just a simple thing like an eBay account with lots of positive feedback, selling things like precious metals, is a really important thing. And it's something that will add additional value and benefit for people down the line. And that's something not to be ignored. There's this almost sort of anti anything that's selling silver and gold movement out there that can, and I think does, affect a lot of other people's volition to want to try flipping coins and selling coins and helping themselves in the long run. Ultimately it's what the dealers do. Dealers are there to make profit, and they will buy stuff at wholesale prices from big mints, and then they'll make a couple of percentage points profit or more, depending on the deal that they've got and the kind of volume they're buying. Don't be under any disillusion that dealers are there to make a lot of money, and if you go and sell stuff to them, you're going to be pretty much taken advantage of, because you're selling quickly to an organization that is able to buy everything that you might have quickly. So my point here is that it is a difficult world we live in. I've talked about the potential for changes in financial systems, and I think it is unlikely that we'll see any huge fundamental shift away from the major fiat currencies that we own. There's a lot of talk about financial collapses and things like that happening, and whilst my approach has always been precious metals as a bit of a hedge, as a little bit of a insurance policy, they've never been a get-rich-quick scheme, and that's something I know a lot of my long-term followers will support. There is, though, still, and you see it every day, even though silver's been flat for the last 3 or 4 months, it's had its little ups, it's had its little downs, but it's basically been flat since the early February silver squeeze movement, where it had a big jump up just close to $30 an ounce, and very short-lived. Silver's flat right now, and there are things that are going to affect the price of metals going forward into the future. And I think one of those issues is, of course, linked to the financial recovery. And it might seem like a bit of an oxymoron to say that with enhanced debt, with increasing debt and potential for inflation rates to go up, that is counterintuitive. What a lot of people don't necessarily understand is that if inflation goes up, then the value of the debt goes down, which means ultimately the country, almost you can say any country is a company these days, but their ability to pay that back becomes easier because the currency is inflating away. If you owe $29 trillion or whatever it is and your currency devalues, then you have to find less real value to pay that debt off. So it is in the interest of governments and organizations to see inflation. That's why we have countries putting targets for inflation of 2%, because it is a way by which they can manage their debt. However, it is risky, because if things get away from you and it does hyperinflate, then your currency will completely fail, and that has, of course, other implications. Now, I have also said a number of times that I think the possibility of the US dollar and the pound completely collapsing is next to zero. We've seen other currencies go to zero, and a lot of other people have said, well, that's all the evidence you need. The Venezuelan bolivar went to zero, and the Zimbabwe dollar went to zero. Yes, they did, but those currencies are not quite the same as dollars and pounds and euros and yen and all the big currencies around the world. They would have to be a real massive shift and a huge calamitous economic. I mean, we've been through one of those calamitous economic things, and the pound and the dollar are still there, and they're not hyperinflated away. A lot of people also think that inflation is currently running rife, and that is what is causing a lot of issues right now. And silver is the one thing that's not inflated. I think it's really important to understand the difference between short-term price increases because of supply chain issues, as opposed to actual inflation. A lot of people have a lot of distrust with that system and the figures by which inflation is calculated, and distrust in governments. And it does seem that the kind of person who is quite happily able to go and sort of put their money into silver and gold starts to become more of a pessimist to these things. And to a certain degree, I would like to think I'm still an optimist, but I am very much still a pessimist, I think, when it comes to my general outlook on life. I do think we are going to be going through periods of uncertainty financially, economically, but I don't think that it's going to cause any kind of calamitous collapse. That's just the pessimist in me, you could call it, but it's also the optimist in me, because I don't want the world to collapse. Why would I want the pounds that I have to collapse? It's very, very difficult to say that you want to see your country basically go to nothing. That's it's a complete no-brainer to me that that's not something I would want to see happen. So how does that all fuel and impact my strategies? That's what I really wanted to sort of finish this video up by saying. So at the start of the coronavirus pandemic, before things really kind of hit the fan, I was very much still on the pathway, I suppose you could say, of accumulating silver and getting as much silver in as I possibly can prior to Brexit. And then post-Brexit, the plan actually was to look to sell a significant amount of that silver and use that as cash to accumulate more gold. The gold I see as this long-term protection asset. Is much less volatile than silver. It's much, in my opinion, safer to look to have. Of course, with silver, there's all of these different premiums involved with it, and that's something that I've talked about at length before. I'm not a fan of the premiums. I do think a lot of the premiums that we're seeing right now are, to really coin a phrase again, is transitory. I think that there are most certainly going to be reductions in these premiums that we see when mints open up, refineries open up, and everything as well. One thing that I have definitely noticed is that there is no shortage of silver. You see so many different grasping headlines out there to say that there's a shortage of silver, and for a while that sort of scared me a little bit. You kind of think, okay, well, that's not good, and maybe I do never want to sell my silver. I want to hold onto it and not let it go. But then you see things like the Royal Mint coming out with Bullion 1 kilo Queensby completer coins, and we don't know the mintage of them, but they make 1,000 kilos. That's an awful lot just to done, minted. Moving the camera around. That's a lot of silver. For me, as a private little manufacturer of poured silver items, contacted one of my suppliers, and it was absolutely no issue whatsoever to source 100 kilos of silver like that. 2 weeks, done. So, the idea that the silver is running out is not likely. It comes back down again to the supply chain side of things, that we are very much still in this area where mints and refineries are finding it difficult to get the material, simply because it's not economically viable with all the social distancing measures that are in place for the mines to operate maximum efficiency. So there are lots of different factors at play. Where it leads my sentiments, though, is very much, I see the calamitous economic forecast that's ahead. It's going to be hard this next decade financially, and there will be a point where we all have to, pay off what we've done to get through and save lives, and that's going to be difficult. So for me, it's about holding on to what I've got. Obviously, I've got a poured silver business, so selling some of my silver has to happen at some point, and I would be lying if I said that there's a small part of me that every time I sell a piece of my poured silver that I think maybe I should just stop all of this and hold back and hold on to everything that I've got, because ultimately, this stuff could be the difference maker. But then I think the realist comes back to the front, and you do have to ground yourself. I remember, this is how I always have seen myself and our situation. I remember turning to Mrs. Backyard Bullion when the hype of the silver squeeze was happening, and all of the excitement that's out there. And I get that, it's great, it's exciting to potentially see a movement take over and make silver go. And I said to Mrs. Backyard Bullion, I said, these people get what they want, and we get $1,000 an ounce silver. We can retire. We won't need to work. We can just stop. And she looked at me, she raised an eyebrow. I was like, yeah, well, that's not going to happen, so better keep working. So, my point is, we are in a different world to, I think, what other people think. And that's fine. People will have their own volition to make their own decisions and buy what they want to buy and hold what they want to hold for us however long they want. But for me, I do have plans to sell a lot of silver at some point, whether it be that I just keep hold of it for 20 years and then look to sell it depending on how the world has gone, or whether we just look to cash it all out at some point when we want to buy a house or just do something else with our lives. Who knows? Set up another business, do something. That's money that's locked away. It's a savings account for me, and that's how I've always looked at it. It's fluid, it's flexible. But I do think that there is more scope for the longer term for me than I did 3 years ago, even 4 years ago. 5 years ago, I was very much on the market to make a little bit of a profit and be gone with it. I've openly said that on a number of different channels, but my opinion has changed. I don't think I'm a lifer. I don't think that this is going to be stuff I'll die with. I think I will look to release all this when I get to the retirement side of things. I'll obviously keep a few little pieces here and there, but the majority of any stack that I have accumulated will be going at some point, and that's how I run and how I operate. But other people are different. And the real message that you need to take away from this video, if you've been watching this long, and a big thank you to anybody who has been watching this long, because I do tend to ramble. It's one of the things I do best, I like to think, is I just sit and I go on tangents, I talk, I critically talk to myself. I'm just sat here in my kitchen, on the kitchen table talking. That's just what I do. But it is important to evaluate what is right for you, for your individual circumstances. Don't rely on others. Don't rely on everything I've said in this video, for God's sake. Just go and make up your own informed decision. Get all the facts that you need, that you think you're going to need. And if the right decision for you is to buy as much silver as you can right now, put it in a safe, forget about it for the rest of your life, then that is fine. I have nothing wrong with that. And I'd love to know if that is you, or if you're completely opposite like me, if you're buying to sell immediately, if you're flipping, if you're trying to make as much money as possible, if you're a profitable little flipper, then that's fantastic. That's it from me. I think we'd love to hear from you down in that comment section, so comment please, and like, share, and all of that jazz. It really helps everything that we do here on the old YouTube algorithm side of things. Otherwise, we'll see you on the next video. A big thank you to you all for watching. And as always, please make sure that you like, share, comment, and subscribe for more.